Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, Book 1, The Dove, 6. He stood between me and the candle, a huge, tall fellow, or so it seemed to me, in a long robe of some brown homespun stuff. The candle made a nimbus of his hair, which seemed to be gray, and he was bearded. I could not see his expression, and his right hand was hidden in the folds of his robe. I waited, poised warily. He spoke again in the same tone. Put up your dagger and come down. When I see your right hand, I said. He showed it, palm up. It was empty. He said gravely, I am unarmed. Then stand out of my way, I said, and jumped. The cave was wide, and he was standing to one side of it. My leap carried me 3 or 4 paces down the cave, and I was past him and near the entrance before he could have moved more than a step. But in fact, he never moved at all. As I reached the mouth of the cave and swept aside the hanging branches, I heard him laughing. The sound brought me up short. I turned. From here, in the light which now filled the cave, I saw him clearly. He was old, with gray hair, thinning on top and hanging lank over his ears, and a straight growth of gray beard, roughly trimmed. His hands were calloused and grained with dirt, but they had been fine, with long fingers. Now the old man's veins crawled and knotted on them, distended like worms. But it was his face which held me. It was thin, cavernous, almost a skull, with a high domed forehead and bushy gray brows, which came down jutting over eyes where I could see no trace of age at all. These were closely set, large, and of a curiously clear and swimming gray. His nose was a thin beak, his mouth lipless now, stretched wide, and his laughter was over astonishingly good teeth. Come back. There's no need to be afraid. I'm not afraid. I dropped the boughs back into place, and not without bravado walked toward him. I stopped a few paces away. Why should I be afraid of you? Do you know who I am? He regarded me for a moment, seeming to muse. Let me see you. Dark hair, dark eyes, the body of a dancer, and the manners of a young wolf. Or should I say, young falcon? My dagger sank to my side. Then you do know me? Should I say I knew you would come some day, and today I knew there was someone here? What do you think brought me back so early? How did you know there was someone here? Oh, of course, you saw the bats. Perhaps. Do they always go up like that? Only for strangers. Your dagger, sir. I put it back on my belt. Nobody calls me sir. I'm a bastard. That means I belong to myself, no one else. My name is Merlin, but you knew that. And mine is Gallopus. Are you hungry? Yes. But I said it dubiously, thinking of the skull and the dead bats. Disconcertingly, he understood. The gray eyes twinkled. Fruit and honey cakes, and sweet water from the spring. What better fare would you get even in the king's house? I wouldn't get that in the king's house at this hour of the day, I said frankly. Thank you, sir. I'll be glad to eat with you. He smiled. Nobody calls me sir, and I belong to no man either. Go out and sit down in the sun, and I'll bring the food. The fruit was apples, which looked and tasted exactly like the ones from my grandfather's orchard, so that I stole a sideways glance at my host, scanning him by daylight, wondering if I had ever seen him on the riverbank or anywhere in the town. Do you have a wife? I asked. Who makes the honey cakes? They're very good. No wife. I told you I belong to no man and to no woman either. You will see, Merlin, how all your life men and women too will try to put bars round you, but you will escape those bars or bend them or melt them at your will, until, of your will, you take them round you and sleep behind them in their shadow. I get the honey cakes from the shepherd's wife. She makes enough for 3, and is good enough to spare some for charity. Are you a hermit, then, a holy man? Do I look like a holy man? No, this was true. The only people I remember being afraid of at that time were the solitary holy men who sometimes wandered preaching and begging into the town, queer, arrogant, noisy men, with a mad look in their eyes and a smell about them which I associated with the heaps of offal outside the slaughter pens. It was sometimes hard to know which god they professed to serve. Some of them, it was whispered, were druids, who were still officially outside the law, though in Wales In the country places, they still practiced without much interference. Many were followers of the old gods, the local deities, and since these varied in popularity according to season, their priests tended to switch allegiance from time to time, where the pickings were the richest. Even the Christian ones did this sometimes, but you could usually tell the real Christians because they were the dirtiest. The Roman gods and their priests stayed solidly enshrined in their crumbling temples, but did very well on offerings likewise. The church frowned on the lot, but could not do much about it. There was a god at the spring outside, I ventured. Yes, Marathon. He lends me his spring and his hollow hill, and his heaven of woven light, and in return I gave him his due. It does not do to neglect the gods of a place, whoever they may be. In the end, they are all one. If you're not a hermit, then what are you? At the moment, a teacher. I have a tutor. He comes from Massilia, but he's actually been to Rome. What do you teach? Or who do you teach? Until now, nobody. I'm old and tired. I came to live here alone and study. Why do you have the dead bats in there on that box? I was studying them. I stared at him. Studying bats? How can you study bats? I study the way they're made, and the way they fly, and mate, and feed, the way they live, not only bats, but beasts, and fish, and plants, and birds, as many as I see. But that's not studying him! But that's not studying, I regarded him with wonder. Demetrius, that's my tutor, tells me that watching lizards and birds is dreaming and a waste of time, though Cedric, that's a friend, tells me to study the ringdoves. Why? Because they're quick and quiet and keep out of the way, because they only lay 2 eggs, but still, though everybody hunts them, men and beasts and hawks, there are still more ringdoves than anything else. And they don't put them in cages. He drank some water regarding me. So you have a tutor. Can you read? Of course. Can you read Greek? A little. Then come with me. He got up and went into the cave. I followed him. He lit the candle once more. He had put it out to save tallow, and by its light lifted the lid of the box. In it I saw the rolled shapes of books, more books together than I had ever imagined there were in the world. I watched as he selected one, closed the lid carefully, unrolled the book. There. With the light I saw what it was, a drawing, spidery but definite, of the skeleton of a bat, and alongside it in neat crabbed Greek letters, phrases which I, immediately forgetting even in Gallipus's presence, began to spell out to myself. In a minute or two, his hand came down over my shoulder. Bring it outside. He pulled out the nails holding one of the dried leathery bodies to the box lid and lifted it carefully in his palm. Blow out the candle. We'll look at this together. And so, with no more question and no more ceremony, began my first lesson with Gallipus. It was only when the sun, low over the wing of the valley, sent a long shadow creeping up the slope that I remembered the other life that waited for me and how far I had to go. I jumped to my feet. I'll have to go. Demetrius won't say anything, but if I'm late for supper, they'll ask why. And you don't intend to tell them? No, but they should stop me coming again. He smiled, making no comment. I doubt if I noticed then the calm assumptions on which the interview had been based. He had neither asked how I had come nor why, and because I was only a child, I took it for granted too, though for politeness' sake I asked him, I may come again, mayn't I? Of course. It's hard to say when. I never know when I'll get away, when I'll be free. Don't worry, I shall know when you are coming, and I shall be here. How can you know? He was rolling up the book with those long, neat fingers, the same way I knew today. Oh, I was forgetting. You mean I go into the cave and send the bats out? If you like. I laughed with pleasure. I've never met anyone like you, to make smoke signals with bats. If I told them, they'd never believe me, even Cedric. You won't even tell Cedric. I nodded. That's right. Nobody at all. Now I must go. Goodbye, Gallipus. Goodbye. And so it was in the days and months that followed. Whenever I could, once and sometimes twice in the week, I rode up to the valley to the cave. He certainly seemed to know when I was coming, for as often as not he was there waiting for me, with the books laid out, and when there was no sign of him, I did as we had arranged and sent out the bats as a smoke signal to bring him in. As the weeks went by, they got used to me, and it took 2 or 3 well-aimed stones to set up the roof, sent up into the roof to get them out. But after a while, this grew unnecessary. People at the palace grew accustomed to my absences and ceased to question them, and it became possible to make arrangements with Gallopus for meeting from day to day. Morovic had let me go more and more on my own way since Olwen's baby had been born at the end of May, and when Camlech's son arrived in September, she established herself firmly in the royal nursery as its official ruler, abandoning me as suddenly as a bird deserting the nest. I saw less and less of my mother, who seemed content to spend her time with her women, so I was left pretty much to Demetrius and Cedric between them. Demetrius had his own reasons for welcoming a day off now and again, and Cedric was my friend. He would unsaddle the muddy and sweating pony without question, or with a wink and a lewd remark about where I had been that was meant as a joke, and was taken as such. I had my room to myself now, except for the wolfhound. He spent the nights with me for old time's sake, but whether he was any safeguard, I have no idea. I suspect no. I was safe enough. The country was at peace, except for the perennial rumours of invasion from Less Britain. Camlach and his father were in accord. I was to all appearances heading willingly and at high speed for the prison of the priesthood, and so, when my lessons with Demetrius were officially done, was free to go where I wished. I never saw anyone else in the valley. The shepherd only lived there in summer, in a poor hut below the wood. There were no other dwellings there, and beyond Gallopus's cave the track was used only by sheep and deer. It led nowhere. He was a good teacher, and I was quick, but in fact I hardly thought of my time with him as lessons. We left languages and geometry to Demetrius, and religion to my mother's priests. With Gallopus to begin with, it was only like listening to a storyteller. He had travelled when he was young, to the other side of the earth, Ethiopia, and Greece and Germany, and all around the Middle Sea, and seen and learned strange things. He taught me practical things too, how to gather herbs and dry them to keep, how to use them for medicines, and how to distill certain subtle drugs, even poisons. He made me study the beasts and birds, and, with the dead birds and sheep we found on the hill, and once with a dead deer, I learnt about the organs and bones of the body. He taught me how to stop bleeding, how to set a broken bone, how to cut bad flesh away and cleanse the place so that it heals cleanly, even, though this came later, how to draw flesh and sinews into place with thread while a beast is stunned with fumes. I remember that the first spell he taught me was the charming of warts. This is so easy that a woman can do it. One day he took a book out of a box and unrolled it. Do you know what this is? I was used to diagrams and drawings, but this was a drawing of nothing I could recognize. It was written in Latin, and I saw the words Ethiopia and Fortunate Islands, and then, right out in a corner, Britannia. The lines seemed to be scrawled everywhere, and all over the picture were trails of mounds drawn in like a field, where moles had been at work. Those, are they mountains? Yes. Then it's a picture of the world, a map. I had never seen a map before. At first I could not see how it worked, but in a while, as he talked, I saw how the world lay there as a bird sees it, with roads and rivers like the radials of a spider's web, or the guidelines that lead the bee into the flower. As a man finds a stream, he knows and follows it through the wild moors. So, with a map, it is possible to ride from Rome to Massilia, or London to Caerleon, without once asking the way or looking for the milestones. This art was discovered by the Greek Anaximander, though some say the Egyptians knew it first. The map that Gallopus showed me was a copy from a book by Ptolemy of Alexandria. After he had explained, and we had studied the map together, he bade me get out my tablet, and make a map for myself, of my own country, when I had done, he looked at it. This in the centre, what is it? Maradunum, I said with surprise. See, there is the bridge and the river, and this is the road to the marketplace, and the barricades are here. I see that. I did not say your town, Merlin. I said your country. The whole of Wales? How do I know what lies north of the hills? I've never been further than this. I will show you. He put aside the tablet, and, taking a sharp stick, began to draw in the dust, explaining as he did so. What he drew for me was a map shaped like a big triangle. Not Wales only, but the whole of Britain. Even the wild land beyond the wall where the savages live. He showed me the mountains and rivers and roads and towns, London and Calais, and the places that cluster thick in the south to the towns and fortresses at the ends of the web of the roads. Saguntium and Caerleon and Eboracum, and the towns along the wall itself. He spoke as if it were all one country, though. I could have told him the names of the kings of a dozen places that he mentioned. I only remember this because of what came after. Soon after this, when winter came and the stars were out early, he taught me their names and their powers, and how a man could map them, as one could map the roads and townships. They made music, he said as they moved. He himself did not know music, but when he found that Olwen had taught me, he helped me to make myself a harp. This was a rude enough affair, I suppose, and small, made of hornbeam, with the curve and four-pillar of red sallow from the tie-wye, and strung with hair from my pony's tail. Where the harp of a prince, said Gallopus, should have been strung with gold and silver wire. But I made the string shoes out of pierced copper coins, the key and tuning pins of polished bone, then carved a merlin on the sounding board, and thought it a finer instrument than Olwen's. Indeed, it was as true as hers, having a kind of sweet whispering note which seemed to pluck songs from the air itself. I kept it in the cave, though Dinius left me alone these days, being a warrior while I was only a suckling clerk. I would not have kept anything I treasured in the palace, unless I could lock it in my clothes chest, and the harp was too big for that. At home, for music, I had the birds in the pear tree, and Olwen still sang sometimes, and when the birds were silent and the night sky was frosted with light, I listened for the music of the stars, but I never heard it. Then one day, when I was 12 years old, Gallopus spoke of the crystal cave. And that is the end of chapter 6.